say Tyler, we have a 62-year-old retired steelworker. Steelworker. So
Okay.
he's been in the factory his whole life, and he just had a hip replacement.
Okay.
And he's 60 pounds overweight.
Okay.
So tell me,
He's not working now.
No, he's retired.
Completely.
Just newly retired,
Okay.
and so he's now coming to you because he's got time to take care of himself.
Okay.
So he had this hip replacement a couple years ago, and that kind of forced him into retirement a little bit early at 62. And now he's got 50, 60 pounds that's accumulated around his midsection, and he's coming to you to get healthy.
Okay. So you had a hip replacement a couple years ago. You do any activity now?
Not really.
Nothing at all. So what's your diet look like currently?
And this is what you guys will get on the actual case study. So Tyler's fishing for this information, rightly so. You guys will have this on the intake form. So you're going to actually get an intake form that gives you all this. So I shouldn't make you ask for it. Let me give it to you. So on the intake form, he would have told you all of that, and we will also, on the intake form that we give you, if there are any medical issues like his hip replacement, any medications, these are things that we should at least talk about very quickly. You guys are not medical doctors. We've made that very clear, and you should not even give an inkling of doubt to your clients that you can help in that area. So when I, on an intake form, see that people wrote down 17 different medications, I don't go look them all up, and I will ask them, what are these for? I'm not a pharmacist, I'm not a medical doctor. Tell me, this is for lowering my blood pressure, this is for lowering cholesterol, this is an antidepressant, whatever. And then I could say, okay, now as a clinician, I think it is important that you guys at least know different classes of medications and what those might impact in terms of metabolism or behavior, but really you should tell them, hey, just remember, I'm not a medical doctor. Any of these things, you should contact your physician and let them know, because they might have some changes they want to make. It's very often, and these are some general things that you should definitely learn. For example, if somebody's on a blood pressure lowering medication, if I help that client lose 20 pounds and they're getting healthier, and they're at that same blood pressure medication, what's going to happen?
Might reduce it.
Yeah, their blood pressure is going to go even lower,
Yeah.
So they may be passing out left and right.
Yep.
They can get up from a chair and fall over and crack their head.
Yep.
And it could have been prevented because you would have reminded them, hey, you need to talk to your doctor about these medications because your physician might need to make changes based on your health status improving. So all of that is why we ask for those points of interest in an intake form. Not that we're going to manage that. We want to help the client manage it better with their physician. So back to our client, 62-year-old retired factory worker, pretty recent hip replacement, 60 or so pounds to lose. And every morning he wakes up and has a big bowl of cereal, and then he goes down to the Greasy Spoon Diner and gets a plate lunch. So they probably have those in Iowa, just kind of get the old open-faced roast beef with gravy, right? And because he's also a widower, so he's home alone by himself. Those kind of things are important. You have to pay attention to those social criteria. And then dinner, sometimes it's just a TV dinner, or he goes to the bar and eats wings while he's watching a game with his friends.
Okay.
That's his diet.
So how much does he weigh?
He's got about 50, 60 pounds
to lose. But what does he weigh currently?
Let's say 240.
240? Okay. And how tall is he roughly?
5'7.5".
7.5. Is that you? I'm just kidding.
It is. I am using my persona.
Okay. So he doesn't eat very good, obviously. That's consistent. His fat intake is probably pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
The open-faced steak sandwich is pretty delicious, but we can definitely change that.
Fast.
And so what I would do, since he only eats, 3 times a day, I try and break that up into something a little bit cleaner, I guess. But I would start them off, starting off with a lower moderate intake of protein. I'd start with probably with what the RDA recommends. Just to start off, because his protein's not really that high. It's maybe just guessing based on what you told me, 100 grams or so, if that. So I'd probably put them around there, just based on what you said. And then carbs would be left over. I always assume they are eating more than what they say.
Right.
What they're telling
Otherwise,
you.
they wouldn't have 60 pounds.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you'll hear people describe healthy eating around the clock of what they're describing that they do. And you always have to assume that they're eating more than what they tell you.
So let me call a timeout here, because that is a very important thing. I was trying to trick Tyler, it didn't work. He's too clever. In me saying I only have these 3 meals, one of which is cereal, the other 2 are pretty benign. There's not a lot there. Maybe too high in fat, but you would say that shouldn't keep you overweight, right? Tyler's exactly right. I'm not telling him about the 6 donuts I have on Saturday mornings before I go fishing. And oh, by the way, with those wings I have at night sometimes, it's also with 8.
I know you said 8
bottles of Coors.
I was gonna say beer is probably involved.
You're right. And so there are those kinds of things. So sometimes I'll ask them, this is pretty good. What you're describing. What do you do when you're at your worst? Like, tell me what really makes this go off the rails. And sometimes people are very honest, and they'll start throwing that stuff at you.
They are. They're like, well, don't judge me, but and I'm like, no, it's all right. Just
I have a sweet tooth. Sometimes I do this.
I'll explain things of what I do. Yeah, and so once you open that door, they really like, oh man, on the weekends I just yeah, exactly. Like on the weekends, man, I'm with the boys. It's my boys' night out. It's poker night. I do this and this. Sunday, I just do this. They really tell you a lot of things. Like, yeah, I forgot I go through the drive-thru 5 times a week as well. And I'm on the go. I get really hungry at 11. I eat more, or I can't stop eating my candy, or things like that you pick up. And also the way people describe things too, it really can be intense with the way they describe it. Like, oh, I go crazy on the weekends, but I don't eat that much. Like, well, you're really intense in how you describe it. So there's something there, but I always assume there's more eating than what they report naturally. And so I think I've only been off like one time in my career, and that was with Leanne, where I was off when I thought she was actually eating more, and she wasn't.
She wasn't.
Yeah, it was insane amounts where she was like, anyway. But yeah, I would put them in the middle ground of, their protein probably, about 100 grams or so, kind of what I said before. And, the calories, I have to do some math, but, the calorically being, 240? Calorically, he could probably be, sedentary, assuming that he can probably do some sort of exercise. He might be, depends on where his hips are at and how well he can walk and move. If you can get him moving, a few times a week, and maybe a walk daily, and then maybe some extra activity on top of that later, 3 times a week, assuming they do that, I'd probably set him at like, anywhere from 17 to 1,800 calories to start off, and kind of use that as a baseline, and then give him maybe, moderate fat. I'd probably put him at like, someone that comes with a little bit higher fat, I like to put him in the middle ground, like 25%-ish or so, and then I kind of reduce from there, and then fill it in with carbs.
So the important thing for your clinical thought process, and then showing your work on the exam, Tyler verbally did that extremely well. But a lot of times on the exam, I'm seeing students, kind of condense that and be very tertiary in just how they're describing it. And I really do want the entire thought process. This is a place where you can be wordy and type as much as you want, because I want to know exactly how you're coming to those conclusions. So the things that I'm just picking up from Tyler here are, number one, he instantly went to the guy's height, weight, physical activity level, the hip replacement slowing him down. And so he said, I'm going to look at 17 to 1,800 calories. So this is where, when you go by that 10 times body weight level, I think you should make the justification that you need to get close to 10 times the ideal body weight. You could make the argument, and this is fine if you guys justify your work, if it's 10 times the body weight, is because his metabolism is higher. He's carrying around that much weight, So maybe his metabolism really is 2,400 calories. But we want to put him in a calorie deficit now. So that's why you're saying, well, let's reduce it down this much. So 500 calories a day would ostensibly give us a pound a week of body fat loss. But like you said, his metabolism's probably really not that high because he's a little bit older and he's got the hip injury.
Yep.
So that's a perfect justification for that calorie range. And then Tyler said he would stick to around 100 grams of protein because he wants to be close to the RDA. But he also said it's about what he's eating now. Maybe we've got to get some protein in his breakfast to get him up there. But if you look at the RDA of protein for this guy, 100 grams would probably be at about 1.5 times the RDA, which is perfect. So as long as Tyler tells me that's how he's coming to those conclusions, that's fantastic. It's competent. It's excellent as a clinician. If he's expressing that on the exam, I'm going to give him all of the points for that. Then, as he said, the fat intake, he wants to keep it close to, obviously down, but close because the guy is single, he's eating out, so he needs a little bit higher allowance for fat for that reason. And that's where, like I said, you want to make sure those goalposts align with what's going to be reality for those people. And then Tyler said he's going to then look at the total calories he wanted. We now know the protein level and the fat, and then we can just do the math to say there are this many calories left. Divide that by 4, and you've got the grams of carbs. So that would be an excellent interpretation of the first part of a case study.
And then going from there, is that the next step of what would you do after that?
Right.
Is that the next question?
So it would be also explain your process for the consulting. Okay. And so, you told me exactly what you're going to do from a macronutrients and programming standpoint, and you gave me all of your work for that, your justifications. So coming up with the answer and then justifying it appropriately is 40 out of 100 points for that case study. So there are 5 20-point blocks. There's one where we want to know your actual consulting process. Tell us what you would do. And we've had people go to the extent of this, and I love it. They would say, well, my office is set up this way, so I would greet them at the door, and then we would come down, and that's awesome, right?
Awesome, yeah.
I want to know that you're thinking of those things. But the reality of our process in asking that question is to understand what kind of a programming model you have. So let's say you do this program consultation, so you're